Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over the best Barbarian build for this season in Season 22. So if you guys have played Whirlwind Barbarian, it is still going to be the best, but there are a few changes that you guys can go ahead and optimize to make yourself do a little bit more damage and min-max a little bit more with the Captain's Crimson set thrown in over here. So first off, let's go ahead and go over the build that was more oriented around pushing, and then we'll also show off a speed build, which I think is super fun. I think most of you guys that are more casual players and not interested in pushing maybe the highest greater rifts, you guys will see gameplay here in a moment of the push and the speed builds, and you'll see that the speed build is just so much fun to play. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into the build. I'm gonna go ahead and actually explain the skills and what you're gonna try to look for on your pieces of gear. So first off, let's go ahead and go over the skills. So in terms of what we're gonna be using for our skills, we're gonna be using Ground Stomp with Wrenching Smash. That's gonna go ahead and group up a bunch of enemies together. Therefore, we can get really good area damage. Now, one thing to take note with this is you don't have to have area damage on your gear if you don't want to. There are technically other ways that you can get more min-maxing here for some of your pieces of gear. But in order to actually get the area damage, you're actually going to have to manually cast Rend, which is kind of hard to see in the gameplay. But what I try to do if I'm playing the build with area damage is I try to go ahead and make use of that Wrenching Smash to go ahead and group up all the enemies, and then I start manually casting Rend. Otherwise, I'm just going to start spinning, so I can go ahead and make sure I'm not taking any extra damage, because with the Wrath of the Waste set, when we're not roll winning, or if we let it go for too long without roll winning, we're going to be taking extra damage. But the main thing with Ground Stomp is it groups up a bunch of enemies. It also does technically generate Fury, so in the very beginning, it helps get you up to par with that Fury, because when you enter the greater rifts, you'll be actually starting out with 0. Next up, we have the Whirlwind skill with Wind Shear. We're going to be running the Lightning Rune. Now, even though we want to get physical damage on our pieces of gear, the Whirlwind actually doesn't deal the damage. It's actually the Rend that applies the damage of the Whirlwind with the stacks, and I'll get into that in a moment. But we're just using this for the Fury generation. Next up, we're running Battle Rage and the Swords rune. This is going to go ahead and allow us to go get some extra heals when we go ahead and hit by a critical attack. Now, just a heads up, you won't be getting any of the crits on the Rend damage, but you will be getting crits on the Whirlwind damage, which still applies. It's just there for extra survivability at the end of the day over here. And then we also have Wrath of Berserker. It doesn't matter what rune that you select, because with one of our bracers, with the Mortix Brace, that will go ahead and make it so Wrath of Berserker gains every rune. So go ahead and pick out maybe your favorite color that you want to go ahead and use for the Wrath of Berserker. And then we have Rend, which is going to be actually dealing all the damage. So it's a Whirlwind / Rend build. So Bloodbath makes it so enemies killed while bleeding cause enemies within 10 yards to begin bleeding for a massive amount of extra damage. And then on top of that, we have Ancient Spear with Rage Flip. This allows you to go ahead and pull elites to other areas, and some of the gameplay that you'll see, I'm trying to drag them towards areas where maybe that the Oculus Ring is summoning, or if there happens to be a lots of, you know, arcane or molten, basically dangerous things on the floor, I'm just going to move myself away and then drag the enemies towards that, so I can go ahead and min-max a little bit more and not have to stand in AoE. So it helps get extra damage. Like right there's the Oculus Ring. Now, keep in mind that with the Rage Flip, you don't want to be standing inside, let's say, the Oculus Ring. You want to be standing in an area where it actually drags them behind you, putting them inside of the ring. It's a little bit hard to do, and you'll probably get used to it after a couple tries. But yeah, just keep that in mind. It doesn't pull them directly next to you. It's behind you. So that's just one thing to take note of. Now, for the passives over here, we have Rampage. So that's just going to increase our strength, so more damage and survivability. Berserker Rage is just more damage. Brawler is just more damage as long as there's 3 enemies, and that's really easy to do with your Wrenching Smash. And then we have Ruthless. It's just more damage to other enemies. Now, there is another important thing to go ahead and take note of. If you don't have the cooldown reduction, make sure you go ahead and use Boon of Bolcathos. The reason why you want this is because it reduces the cooldown of your Wrath of Berserker. And if you're unable to keep up Wrath of Berserker, you're not going to be able to deal as much damage as you should be, and you'll also be taking a lot more damage. So Boon of Bolcathos if you don't meet the cooldown thresholds. And if you feel like your damage is okay enough, you can maybe run the Cheat Death if you want to as well. Now, in terms of the cube, we want Ambo's Pride. That's going to make it so whenever we we attack with War Run, we're going to go ahead and apply Rend, and the total damage of Rend is dealt over 1 second. And then we have Lamentation, so Rend will now stack up to 2 times on an enemy and increases the damage of it. Then we have Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac to sustain our Wrath of the Berserker, and then we also happen to have Ring of Royal Grandeur. That's going to allow us to go ahead and have the new seasonal buff change, making it so pretty much every build will be running the Captain Crimson set, and that will allow us to run both. Now, in terms of the pieces of gear, you're pretty much looking for the same things that you normally would on any Diablo build. Crit hit, chance, crit hit, damage. Now, even though Rend cannot crit, Rend still benefits off of crit, chance, and damage anyway, so might as well go ahead and get that. Now, the important things to take note of is you want to get Rend damage. Do not worry about Whirlwind damage. Rend is how you're going to be dealing all of your damage in this build, so you want that Rend damage on your chest piece as well as your shoulders. Ideally, trying to get cooldown reduction as well as that area damage is ideal, and obviously main stat is okay, and you can eventually roll that off once your Paragon is either high enough or you happen to go ahead and augment your piece of gear. But in terms of the helmet, the most important thing is just that crit hit chance. For the shoulders, you want that area damage as well as cooldown reduction and that Rend damage. Now, if you don't want to play the build where you have to manually cast Rend, there are people that do like to go ahead and play like that. Don't worry about the area damage at all. And then at that point, don't manually cast Rend. But if you want to min-max and push the highest grade rifts, that's what you're going to need to actually do. And then for our amulet, Flip of Time is ideal here. It's usually for everything that is going to be pushing greater rifts, but basically crit chance, crit damage, and cooldown reduction, and then if you can get physical on it as well, that would be ideal. And then for our chest piece, the only real important thing is to get that Rend damage on it. And then for our gloves, crit chance, crit hit damage, cooldown, and area damage, if you can get all those. But if you don't happen to get one of them, or if you don't want to run area damage, that's totally fine as well. Next up, Mortix Brace is going to be the best bracers. Just roll that physical, bonus damage, and crit hit chance, and then at least have that strength on it, and you'll be okay. If it rolls instead of vitality, you get something like all resist, that's fine too. But ideally, this is what you try to get. And then for the belt, we're running Captain Crimson set. It's just going to be all of like the generic defensive stuff, which is vitality, all resist, life, and strength. Ideally, you want to get that resistance, all resist, instead of that armor. But in terms of the rings, the convention of elements, what you're looking for is crit chance, crit damage, and then area damage or cooldown reduction. If you need it in other pieces of gear, you can go ahead and do that as well. And then for the boots, nothing special with this other than just the defensive stats here, which are strength, vitality, resistances, armor. And then we're running the Little Rogue and the Slanderer. That is going to be the Istvan's Paired Blades. That's going to make it so every time we actually Whirlwind, we're going to be actually gaining extra stacks. It's almost like running Taeguk, which is the legendary gem. Now, in the background, guys, you guys are seeing the speed gameplay here, which we, instead of these, we actually run the Bulk Hathos set, which actually grants us extra attack speed and movement speed, and it makes it so our Fury just starts generating. But that's the real only difference with the main part of the items that you'll acquire. The rest is just kind of swapping in different pieces of the skills, as well as some of the runes for the speed build. But Little Rogue and the Slanderer just make it so we're going to go ahead and be able to get extra attack speed, damage, and armor. It's, again, just basically like Taeguk. Speaking of the gems, we're going to be running Taeguk over here. That's going to grant us extra damage and survivability, because with the second bonus we get 2% increased armor for every stack. And then running Bane of the Trapped and then Bane of the Stricken for the gems. Now, in terms of the gems in our pieces of gear, we're going to go ahead and throw a diamond in all of our pieces of gear for extra survivability, and then we're going to go ahead and throw in the emeralds for our weapons, just like you would in majority of the Diablo builds. Now, you guys are seeing in the background now, we have swapped over to the speed gameplay, and I like it so much more. The build is so much fun to go ahead and play, and it just zips across. We're doing rifts in basically 2 minutes. Now, we obviously are going to have to lower it in order to do this. This is the equivalent of Torment 16 over here. For the greater rifts, I'm just leveling up some gems, but the previous gameplay was a higher greater rift. It was 100, and pretty much for that, the main difference is kind of rotating on our convention of elements, which in our case is going to be physical, but we don't really need to play that in the lower rifts anyways. But in terms of the things that would be different, we don't need Mortix Brace. We obviously want Nemesis. If we're going to be doing a speed build, this is pretty much the go-to. And all the pieces of gear are basically going to be the same in terms of what we're looking for, just making sure, again, we get that physical damage on the Nemesis Bracers. And then, again, the Bulk Kathos is ideal over here. The most important things on our weapons are actually going to be that cooldown reduction. Again, making sure you're able to keep up Bulk Kathos. Sometimes on the lower grader rifts, what happens is you're not hitting the enemy, so you won't be activating that Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. So getting cooldown is ideal on your weapons, as this is basically a speed build anyways. Now, the build has actually changed up on our skills a little bit here. We happen to be running Sprint with Marathon, that's just for more movement speed. And then Battle Rage, we're running Ferocity just for extra movement speed. And then instead of doing the Wrenching Smash to group up the enemies, we're just going to run Furious Charge because we're just going to basically zoom through the content, which will also proc our Band of the Might anyways to give us that damage reduction where normally we'd have to use that Wrenching Smash for. And then same thing over here. In terms of the passives, the only thing that you really want to be on the lookout for is Pound of Flesh. That just gives us extra movement speed. And then for the other cube slot, instead of running previously, you would normally run any combination of Band of Might, Convention of Elements, Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, and Royal Ring of Grandeur. Ingyam can be good. It can go ahead and activate your cooldowns a little bit faster, giving you access to charging a little bit more consistently. Or if you want to go ahead and run any of these in both of the builds, not only the speed, but even pushing, if you don't happen to have some of these things early on, you can be on the lookout for things like Mantle of Channeling or the Hexing Pants of Mr. Yan. Both of these will go ahead and increase your damage. The Mantle of Channeling will also give you some form of damage reduction, and Hexing Pants does technically help out with the resource generation, but that's pretty much irrelevant in most of the builds anyways for this. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for the different builds and variations, and these will both be pinned down below in the comment section below if you guys want to go ahead and check it out, or if I was too fast on anything. But if you guys have any questions, let me know on the comment section down below. If you guys have any other suggestions for this build, as there are, again, a few other things that you can go ahead and throw in the cube due to Season 22's awesome Kanai's cube buff where we get an extra slot. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like on it. And if you're new here and want to see more Diablo builds and more Diablo content, as well as other gaming stuff, hit subscribe, turn on that bell, and you'll definitely see more very soon. But take care, guys, and I will catch you on the next video. And I'm signing out. Peace.